fuck, wait. Gotta make sure my little other AI buddy transcript thing is also doing this. Hi, yeah. Where are you calling from?
DC.
DC, very cool. So it's not too late. It's 9 o'clock there.
Yeah,
So,
not bad. Just
oh,
got back home, so
this is the only time I can figure out that works for both East Coast and where I'm currently at. Okay, so this is starting. David, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Tell me what you're currently doing, and what you would like to be doing.
yeah. So currently a student, studying computer animation. So generally just doing lots of 3D art. Specifically, I chose computer animation just because I felt like it's broad enough to be able to apply to a lot of different fields within the 3D world. Whether that's like game art or like architectural visualization or movies and film. As far as what I've done, it's a lot of the things you'll see on my site is just personal projects, like things I just wanted to make. A lot of just images that I thought would look cool, kind of thing. Lately, I've been trying to do like more product ad kind of centric stuff to hopefully, ideally, get into the eyes of like potential employers. Like I can potentially do this kind of stuff, like visual design for products, kind of thing, specifically. Um, but yeah, it's kind of it, really.
Okay, so you're still a student.
Mhm.
Sorry, I muted myself. You're still
Okay,
a
cool.
student. What year are you in school?
So in school, I am a freshman, but I took a break, so I'm 25 now. So that's kind of why I'm really pushing to hopefully try and get a portfolio and trying to like get employed because I, yeah, I'm kind of at that age where I feel like I should have a job in doing what I want to do, kind of thing. Um, and so that's
It's all
also,
the
yeah, I mean, I
same.
don't know. It is like
It's all the
everyone's
same.
life's different and everything, but
I
yeah, that's
I
also part of the
did
reason. Good.
I did a I was older in my class as well. So here. Okay, you can still hear me, correct?
Yeah, you're good.
Fuck, my internet is bugging again. It was just so good, and now it's going to give me shit. Anyway, let's see how far, and if I need to,
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
go outside. There's better connection there. But I was also like one of the oldest in my class when I went to like a proper university. Um, if anything, you're a freshman. That means what? You have at least 2-3 years before you graduate your program.
Yeah. My program's a 3-year program, so
So look at it this way, right? Don't feel like you necessarily have to like this pressure of like, oh, I should be doing what I want to do. Like it takes everyone, time to get there. If anything, look at it as an opportunity where you're older, you are a little, I want to say wiser, but compared to someone who's 21, 22,
sure,
you can argue
sure.
that and take it as an opportunity to like look for as many internships, as many like experience opportunities as possible.
Mhm.
Because while everyone is still figuring out that like, oh my God, I just turned 21 and I can drink now, and I want to like do this and that, like you're a bit older, you've done that, and now you can use that to your advantage of like, I'm gonna go and get as many opportunities like internships or like make as many connections as possible so that when I do
Mhm.
graduate in 2 years or 3 years, I'm gonna have a job.
Mhm.
So there's nothing wrong with like being older. Like I was older, I think I graduated when I was like, I don't remember how old, it's too long ago already. But what I will say was the most helpful for me was that like when I did get to the university after already doing like 2 years of community college, every semester, after my first one, because took me, I wanted to get some footing, I had an internship, and that like 100% contributed to me getting a job fairly quickly after school. And
Mhm.
when people ask me like, oh, how do you have experience, like when these job roles are asking for like 1 to 3 years and you just graduated,
Right.
like all of that stuff is experience. All of those internships, all of those like working opportunities is experience, and that's what's like they're looking for.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
hold on one second. Let me just adjust the light here a bit. Ay, ay, ay. It's nice and sunny today, but at some point I can't see my
A
screen.
little too sunny.
So, what do you want to get out of this portfolio review? Like what, yes, you're older. We talked about, not having to feel the pressure. And listen, you may listen to me, you may not listen to me, whatever. But what is your biggest concern right now?
I think what like kind of intrigued me was just having someone who like has experience in what like just like creative industry in general to like actually just take a look at what I have, and if just like anything that like really just stands out, like okay, here's what is wrong, here's what is doing good, because I really just started putting it together. Um because because I wanted to start getting things like internships or like opportunities and everything. Because yeah, like this is all stuff I that's the other thing. I don't really share my work. I don't really know why. So yeah, just fairly recently I started putting things on ArtStation and like actually making things public. Um and so yeah, I just wanted to have an outside perspective essentially. Because yeah, I don't know. I don't really
Yeah,
know exactly what I'm doing.
sure. No one does, right? I'm
Right.
making it up as I go as well. Um, so yeah, overall, let's do this. Let's talk about like I'll give you a sense of what I look at a portfolio, how I look at portfolio and how I like to approach it. Then I'll give you a little background, or maybe give you a little direction in terms of like what you may or may not want to do. But for
If we
me,
could,
go
sorry,
ahead.
before we
Go ahead.
move forward, could we actually do, so I actually made a separate one from the ArtStation one. It'll be davidzerba.com. And that
Perfect.
is kind of a little bit more of an actual, like I've started to try to put things together and like in a way that kind of like maybe shows process. I don't know. Cause the ArtStation is really just like, here's everything. And then this one's a little bit more um not refined, but you know what I mean? Like a little bit more. Yeah.
Totally. So it's good that you have both, right? And to your point before of like, I'm just kind of starting off, I've never really shared my work. Get comfortable with just putting everything out there in the world. Anything you
Mhm.
make, you mess around with. If it's a place, if ArtStation is the new deviant art for 3D and this world, because again, I'm not, I'm more graphic designer. I
Right.
work with 3D designers, but it's not what I make. Then
Right.
absolutely continue to post stuff on there. And you know what? Take a step further, post it on social media, because I think 3D is a really 3D and animation is going to be I mean, it's slow burning in the sense, but I think it's going to continue to grow more and more and more in the future as we get more digital. So I think that's really
Mhm.
good. Um, then when it comes to your portfolio, you're using Adobe Portfolio right now, yes?
Right. Correct.
So this is what I think of as a portfolio. One, to your point, portfolio should show your process in your work, right? Um, and I'll touch on like some specifics. I'll get nitty-gritty with you. Like I see what you're doing here. This is good.
Yeah, this
Um,
was probably like the first actual post where I was like, okay, let's think of this as an actual portfolio.
when it comes to your portfolio, don't think of these as posts. Think of these as like, what they call case studies, but like imagine that each project, not to like make this sound like super, high, like crazy, but like everything that I would put on my portfolio website is essentially an opportunity for me to explain like give a presentation, right? So what I'm seeing right here is like even if this was a personal project, you'd want to like detail like why you even wanted to start this, right? Like I don't know what
Right.
Klein is and I don't know what Klein tools are, but if Klein's a brand, it would be helpful to like have a little background. Maybe this is like a concept for a pen that you wanted to like bring to life because of X, Y, and Z reason. And then you'd want to
Mhm.
tell me about like your thoughts and why it started to look like this, or some of the shapes that you use, some of the forms that you use. And then from there, you can then talk about things like color and like the materials and what, like, you know, you want to build that story. Like every quote unquote post or project that you add to portfolio needs some sort of story, right? How you present that story can vary, but what I strongly recommend to stay away from is just things like this, like, oh, here's a personal project to practice. Yes, but like that's where, like, if that's the case, that goes on ArtStation. When you bring it over to your portfolio, this is Klein Tools is a outdoor brand that focuses on high grade materials with functionality, whatever, blah 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 blah. They don't have a pen necessarily in their collection, so I wanted to bring together that idea of what that could potentially be, right? Like that's what I mean by you want to build a story. The other thing I would recommend, and again, like you're early on, you have 3 years to figure this shit out. So it's not like you need to do it now. Your work in terms of quality looks great. And you can that'll do a lot of the speaking for you over time, right? Now that I know that you're early in your program, I can get to you early and tell you this. Think about how you want to present yourself to the world, right? Like, yes, Adobe Portfolio is your solution right now because it's easy. It'll get your projects online and you'll be able to like write some stuff about it. Great. But over time, and this is where my thoughts on portfolios, I think, are sort of differ from some. Like a portfolio is very much that, like for a creative, it's very much that tool that communicates like who you are a bit and what your opinion is on design and creative without you being there. So for me, like I had a very, I'll eventually, I'm going to make a video where I show like all the variations of my portfolio from like when I graduated to like now. But like when I first started off, I had a, hold on one second. Let me just put this on Do Not Disturb. I had like a very colorful pastel background. I didn't have any images. Everything was all text based. And, I had like a lot of these fun little elements that were like, I had a list of like things I like and dislike. And so those were all like kind of trying to communicate my personality a bit. And the same thing, eventually you'll want to do the same as well. You'll want to like pick a platform that'll allow you to customize it in a way that gives you that sense of personality, that gives you that sense of style and like what you like to do. Don't worry about taking notes, by the way. All this stuff will be sent over to you.
Okay, cool.
You'll have like a link to the recording and all this.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So that's like something that will be in the back of your mind as you continue to like learn and go through your program. I feel like this is an opportunity for me to give you some of the things that'll arm you to get better and better over the years. So the making sure that when you include a project on your portfolio website, you're giving it detail, you're giving a background. And again, almost as if you were to, like, when I would go to my portfolio website, I could, there's very few times in an interview like years ago where they'd be like, pull up your website and let's look at something. It was always like a physical, like printed out presentation. But in the situations where they were like, yeah, we'll pull it up on the screen, we could just look at it. It wasn't like everything that I had written on there was pretty much like how I would walk through the project and talk about it, but I didn't have to look at it, like I didn't have to read it like word for word because I had known like how I wanted to talk about these things. And that's the same way that you want to kind of build these case studies out, in a way, like if you were to give a presentation, like you would stop at an image and you would talk about this, and then you'd stop at an image and you'd talk about this, like having that sense of like how you'd want to walk through it is also like will help make it easier to build out things like case studies for your portfolio website.
Got it.
Especially for you, I think like, I mean, it's hard, right? Like tell me a little bit about like some of the work that you admire and like what you want to do. Because again, like you could be the designer that like makes really beautiful things and doesn't really need to like include a whole lot. But if you're also thinking about stuff like, well, what if the opal, like the opal doesn't look like that today? What if it looks like this instead? Then that's going to require some more sort of like showmanship and presentation.
Mhm.
So tell me like where your interests are.
Yeah, I mean, so the so in terms of just generally art, the tough thing with me has always been I do just like anything and everything having to do with it. So I have done graphic design stuff, I have done video stuff, photography. But in the background, it's always been like the real thing, like when it's like late at night, like I always find myself just playing with 3D, especially the lighting and rendering part, like really making sure images like look nice and pretty and then also realistic as well.
Yeah,
Part of it is because I really liked photography, but I didn't have the gear. And so in 3D, I can do it and like still do the same principles and concepts, but for free on my computer kind of thing. So lately, I've been really trying to focus in on that part. So more of the visual design stuff, more of like how to present, like, and specifically, I've been doing products just because I feel like maybe studios or employers might like that kind of thing. Like practically, that's a good use of it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just like making pictures that look good and pretty kind of thing personally. I'm not the most in terms of like design. I feel like I'm not the most creative and like coming up with new concepts and everything, but I am very good at making sure what I have in front of me like looks good. I know how to like present something. I know how to like break down like styles from like professionals and then like reverse engineer it so that I can do it myself kind of thing. Especially on a budget. That was like a main thing for a while. It's like learning how to get high quality results with like not high quality
sure.
equipment kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I've been doing the whole like hydro flask stuff, like the opal stuff. Um, but in terms of like presenting myself, I feel like probably would be like the whole visual design aspect of it. Like,
So I think like one, I think you're again, because you're younger in your career sense, like that will eventually develop.
yeah, yeah, I'm not entirely
Like
sure,
you like
really.
it's always when you're younger, like you want to learn how to do the thing so that you can do the thing, right? It's never like I
Right.
want to come up with new ideas because it's like you're trying to repeat, learn, so like that'll change over time. Um, so but in the meantime, like as we're talking about like how does it relate to your portfolio, that's fine. Again, you can let the work and the quality speak for itself. I think, again, like your attention to detail is really valuable when it comes to employers, especially in this 3D landscape. Have you ever, so there's two people that come to mind. I don't know the second guy's name off the top of my head. Um, but he's very much like when you mentioned like, yeah, I got into 3D because like I didn't really have the money for photography stuff and I wanted to
Mhm.
like, be able to like produce material and be creatives. He fuck, I'll send it over in the notes, but he's a guy on TikTok and he does the same thing. He's like, yeah, I'm a photographer, but like now I just work in 3D because I just like can make these really cool
Right,
images that you can't get at a camera, and like I can
right.
do all these cool concepts. I'll send him over, but there's also another guy I want to show you. I think like immediately kind of came to mind as well. This guy's name is Flavio. Um, you can see my screen, right? You can see this Lego car and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
This guy is someone I've always followed because I've always wanted to, same reason, like I think 3D is so cool because you can achieve an amazing quality and not have to do anything in camera or anything like that.
Right.
And I've always wanted to learn, but I know I won't. And I will just end up working with great, talented people like yourself and rather do that because it's a lot easier. But this guy is really, really awesome. He does 3D,
Yeah.
but he does all kinds of crazy stuff too. Like, let me see if I can find something that for a while he was doing these like laser animations like every day. Yeah, these things were
Wow.
just like he was just doing these and doing all different kinds of like what he was calling tracer experiments, which was cool. And he would just do a bunch of them, like just beautiful things.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
No, that's sick.
yeah, like this is gorgeous, like awesome
Mhm.
stuff. And so like, he comes to mind immediately because I think like again, he's sort of working on this idea or this concept of like, achieving a really high quality of execution, but also being a little creative as well in in the process and finding those opportunities to get like weird. Like, remember he was doing this stuff where he was just kind of doing experiments with like, I guess, gravity, or, like experimenting with how the physics of this
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
works.
like physics stuff, yeah, simulation stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just really cool. I'm pretty sure like these are all IKEA parts and shit. Um,
Yeah, like
there's,
I follow a bunch of pages like this where it's just like these designers essentially just playing around and making like cool looking images. Like ideally in my head, I'm like, that would be cool. Like that's kind of a dream, like just essentially just have fun and just post pictures. Like I'm sure they have real projects and everything, but
oh, they
a
have
lot of
real
it seems
projects,
like,
believe me.
yeah, yeah, but like just being able to, yeah, make cool things just because you can kind of
There's
thing.
another guy too. Fuck, I don't remember his name. He's also a really talented designer, and I need to. I'll send him over as a reference as well. He did like an NFT project. Guy, I feel like his name is Guy, but anyway, I'll send you these guys. Good
Mhm.
people. Like, the things that I'm kind of seeing a lot lately amongst designers when I have these reviews is, they're so focused on working and making stuff that they don't really like. When I ask them, like, who do you look up to, like what work inspires you, like whose work inspires you, they don't know how to answer it because they're not looking at other stuff. And the biggest
Mhm.
thing, and I just put this in my newsletter as well, I think the biggest thing that younger creatives can do is really like start to immerse yourself in the world that you want to work in, right? Like, now it doesn't have to be crazy or over the top, but like, follow the pages that you think are really interesting. Like, look into the people that are making those work. Don't just follow like just the page that reposts a bunch of shit. If something catches your
Mhm.
eye, go and track down that person that made it and familiarize the other with the things that they also made outside of that, right? Because it's going to lead you down these wonderful rabbit holes that will continue to inspire you, continue to kind of, for you, set yourself a goal in a way of like, yeah, I want to do this, like this is the kind of stuff that I want to do, because then it puts you back on that path of, okay, how do I do that? Like, how did they make this? And that's when you start practicing, you start getting better. you know Unfortunately, like, some designers are like, or some people just learn graphic design, they're like, cool, I can make logos and I can make this and that, and like, I'm just going to go make a bunch of that stuff now. And that's fine, but at the same time, I think like it doesn't really, like, I was trying, it was hard for me to like figure out how to phrase this yesterday, but like, you start to make work that's really flat, and you start to make work that is really like, it doesn't really get you to think too much, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't really make you, and again, I'm speaking very like, I speak with a lot more graphic designers than I do with 3D or motion and stuff like
Sure.
that. So
No, no,
it's
I mean, it
different,
all applies though.
but in that same way, like when someone says like, oh, this is like an electrician logo that I made, when it's, and then the logo is like a wrench and like a lightning bolt.
Right.
Like, yes, that is a logo that you made for an electrician. It's obvious. It might be a little obvious, and not saying that obvious is bad, like there are plenty of obvious logos that just hit and you know
Sure.
that they're amazing. But
Apple.
most of the time, those logos are done with a lot of intention and expertise.
Mhm.
And, when you're making really, like, when that's like the go-to thing of like, or like that's like the normal of your work, and it doesn't really get you to think, it doesn't really get you to really understand, or other than like, yeah, it's like a logo with a lightning bolt and a wrench, you kind of like just start to blend into the mediocre crowd of creatives.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think one of the things, or the reasons I do this, and make content on TikTok, is to kind of point people in that direction to start asking more questions before they like say something is final, start pushing the boundaries of what they do. So I think like you'll eventually start to make your way into that. Again, like, you're young, and I say young in career, but you have time. You're going to learn a shit ton in school as well. And over time you'll develop more of a taste, more of a preference, more of a bias towards the things that you want to do.
Right.
Let me go back to.
Yeah, and definitely don't hold back from if you ever need to do like a graphics design like analogy or talk graphic design. Because I currently am doing graphic design for work right now.
Sure.
But it's just not like something in the end, it's not really what I want to do. So definitely feel free to
So
talk about it.
this Hydro Flask one, this project aims to showcase Hydro Flask in various settings, highlight for the brand's love for the outdoors and versatility. The photos display a few colors. Okay, so first thing, I think you've added a lot of grain
Mhm.
just in general on these photos. And I think like I think there needs to be more ruggedness. Like
I
aesthetically.
see. Yeah.
Aesthetically, I think like, treatment wise, there's a lot of grain here. And I think you would need to make it like do slight adjustments for that to fit. Like grain is usually associated with like more of a vintage, film like aesthetic, but your colors are very saturated here and
Mhm.
they're not exactly in the most like art directed settings. So that's just some like a really nitpicky thing. Again, like
Yeah.
your quality is there, so I'm gonna get nitpicky with you. Let's in terms of like how you're describing this, I like to think of it this way. No matter what, if it's a made up project or if it's for a project for a client, I approach them the same exact way. Sure, at the end of a made up project, I'll make sure to mention that this was something
Okay.
self-initiated, but like think of it as like you're presenting this to a potential new client. They go, hey, what did you do for Hydro Flask? Right? You're not going to say like, oh, like it was aimed to show the bottle in various settings,
I see.
it's like that's not the first thing you're going to say.
Right.
And for me, like if this was a project that I had done, if regardless of like your thought or anything, like I would have looked at it and said, okay, cool. Hydro Flask is a well-known brand when it comes to versatility and the ruggedness of their products. We wanted to and this can actually kind of go to like how you think about approaching these things, right? So like right now you have this in like a desert setting. Perhaps like the concept for this, rather than having it in their like super saturated colors, is that like this is a desert line, like this is a line specifically made for the Midwest. And in that, they are releasing new colorways that resemble the color palettes that you would see in those areas, right? So like this light blue would probably fall into place because you could say like the sky at sunset. This yellow might be too saturated, things like that. And so then you start to build this story of like, well, this project was to highlight Hydro Flask's Midwestern campaign, and whatever you wanted to call it. Come up with a cool name for that. And they wanted to show how their product would survive out in the deserts of the Midwest, in the Western United States, in the desert, in the high temperature, in the sandy, dusty, patches of the world, whatever. And, then you could talk about like how you wanted to showcase these or how you wanted to art direct these, right? So like, as we're building this story, like this image starts to fit in a little bit more. Maybe not the colors of these two.
Sure.
Maybe this one can, right? You can like stretch that. These can start to play in more. Maybe this needs to get slightly adjusted to resemble more sand or sand, whatever, clay. This starts to feel like, okay, cool, we're building the story. This is sunset. This is like when you have everyone's sitting around a fire and everyone's got their Hydro Flask together. Cool. This starts to feel out of place, right? Because now we're like desert, stone, clay, green. No, there's no green out in the desert, like there's none of that like lushness there.
I see.
So like maybe that image doesn't make it into this campaign,
Mm-hmm.
And like that's how you can approach. I know you're saying, like you were saying before, like, oh, I'm not really creative. I'm like more about like the execution. But you can get there, like this is, we're not doing anything crazy here. We're just trying to build a little bit of an atmosphere like you do in your
Yeah.
work to really show like your skill.
Yeah. It sounds to me, or like at least what I'm hearing is a lot of like, yeah, just intention and just figuring out like why I'm making the things
Yes.
that I'm making.
Yes.
And like
I was
what,
literally just gonna
yeah.
say that. If there was one thing that I learned in school, because I again like I was very much in the same boat where I'd find someone's work and like here I'll pull up an example. I found these guys in school and they make awesome illustrations. They're just so cool. Um, and I was obsessed with them in school. Like I was like, oh my God, they're like so amazing at Illustrator and they're just like so cool. And they
Yeah.
make these like really like they make these flat illustrations, but then they make these like really in-depth, like really cool
Yeah.
ones. And it's like all this detail. And I was
Oh
like,
wow.
I want to
Yeah.
learn how to do that. And so I went and made a poster like that replicated this style just for the hell of it. And then I
Mhm.
somehow was able to like create a bullshit story to my professor of why I did it. And that worked. And I did that for so long until like my last semester, I had one professor who still to this day is one of my biggest inspirations. Um, and he told me, like, he brought me to this idea of intention, like having an intention, and also the idea of like design is also a language, right? So intention of being like, if you are going to use a specific typeface, if you're going to use a typeface, what's the reason behind it? Is there some symbolic reason, some metaphorical reason? Is it because the typeface designer that made the original typeface is from, has some kind of connection or something? Not that everything needs this level of intention, because you can easily say, oh, there's no intention there. It's literally just because aesthetically it looks good. And that's fine.
Mhm.
But you yourself need to make that decision and you need to have that in your mind. And then he was
I
talking to
see.
me about language, and language is very much an agreement, right? Like if we both say, if we, if you and I look at each other and say, this is a dog, and we both agree that it's a dog. That's how language works, right?
Mhm.
Like, so he again, this was my last semester, and this is where I started to learn from this professor, and I've carried that on through everything that I've made, you know, anything that I put out, anything that I work on, whether it is something that's just a sketch and I post that, or something that is very polished and finished, there is intention behind it. And you don't necessarily have to like publish the intention every time. You don't have to make it known,
Sure.
but you yourself have that idea. You yourself know, like, this is something that I was, this was something I was messing around with that taught me this, and that was my intention. And I think that's really key.
I
And I
see.
think also, again, a lot of younger creatives miss learning about that, or miss that part where they're just like making things and they're just like, yeah, it's they're an electrician, it's a lightning bolt and a wrench, like that's the example I'll harp on for
Right.
this review.
Right.
There's no intention behind it, there's no
Mhm.
real other than like electrician logo.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
What other questions do you have? I think, like, again, in terms of quality, like I don't want to get too deep. Like, you have 3 years of your program, you're gonna learn a shit ton, your portfolio is gonna change constantly. And again, my biggest advice would be go start seeking out internships and stuff like that as soon as possible. But what
Mhm.
other questions do you have?
Um, I don't know, I guess, well, so when you did your design and graphic design, and especially when you were like starting out, did you, how did you, like, say you, did you like have a style or like certain kind of projects that you wanted to do? And then did you present yourself in that way? Or did you kind of open it up like, here's all the different things I can do, hire me because I'm very skilled at what I do kind of thing? Like, in terms of portfolios and in terms of presenting yourself to clients or employers, do you find that it might be better to like find a specific niche and be like, I'm really good at this niche. If you need me, I'm the guy. Or do you think it's better to be like, I can do anything you need kind of thing? If that makes any sense in terms of the
Um,
question.
no,
Like
it doesn't.
say like
I get what
okay,
your question is. I get what your
okay.
question. Um,
Or does that not really matter?
I so like a little background, like I was a painter all through pretty much till I got to like my actual program. Like I didn't know anything about design. I was like, I want to be an artist. I'm good at drawing, I'm good at painting. And it wasn't until like my last semester of community college where I learned about like what they call 2D design. It was just or 2D visual communication. That's what they called it. And that was my last class, one of my last classes in my last semester of community. And that's when I decided, okay, I want to go pursue this and see what it's about. I got to design school. I learned about typography, loved it. And I was very much experimenting. I was like a photographer for a couple of years while I was in school. I was taking photos at a nightclub that I thought I wanted to be like a tour photographer for a while. I was trying to mess around with illustration and like maybe I wanted to make like really fancy illustrations. And over time, I figured out like I wanted to work in more like branding and also digital. Like I loved making websites and I knew that I wanted to get into doing more of that stuff. It was also like just at the time where apps started becoming really popular. Like downloading an app was, like a big
You're dating
thing.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, totally. Yeah. I mean, but like I knew like at the time, like being a product designer was like that was it wasn't like UI UX just yet. It was product design. And I knew like that's the space I wanted to get into. And so I had that idea, but to your point of like how I presented myself, I didn't present myself out. Yeah, I guess me specifically, like I didn't really present myself outside of those realms of like the projects that I had on my portfolio when I graduated were like very tailored to like this idea of like branding and marketing and like working within creating logos for concepts of companies or creating the website for a company and stuff like that. But like, to our advantage, like I was older in my program and I had a sense I had an extra 2 years of like figuring out what it was I kind of wanted to do. And I interned every semester, like, which again helped me figure out what it was that I wanted to do more of. Like I went into an internship where I just did typesetting for books. And I was like, never again do I want to do anything that has any relationship to it. I did marketing for like a preschool. And again, I was like, I really don't enjoy working like this either. So like, yeah, by the time I got out of school, sure, I had a better sense, but I was doing all of that experimentation while I was in school, like while I had the opportunity, because one, I didn't care where I got the experience from. Like I just got the experience, which again was like leveling up my resume. And two, it was teaching me like, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I like this? Do I not like this? So that was really important. So yeah, by the time that I was ready to graduate, I had a clear idea of like what I wanted to continue doing. Relating it back to you, I think there is this sort of unique situation where your skill, this skill of like 3D and being able to composite images and render images is a bit unique because you can use it in a couple of different, mediums, in different ways. What really matters is that core skill. So like, and tell me if like I'm going, if this is totally completely off, but like, I could see your working at a agency that works with Apple that does the renders for their products. I can see you doing work at a character studio, or if that's something that you're into, again, like, because that core skill, like that's the work, like that, like being able to have that is where a lot of the time and effort goes into versus like how it's applied,
Yeah,
So
because yeah, I I'm glad you said that because yeah, that's kind of how I see it. Where I feel like I'm good at it. I just don't know
How
what
you want to apply
like.
it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Well,
I
that's
just
the
never
thing,
know. Like,
you need to experiment. Like, tell me some things that come to mind of like where you'd want to apply these skills. Because again, like for me, it's like, when I think of 3D, I think of like, okay, the 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 top of the top in my eyes is like I want to go to Apple and I want to work for an agency partner of Apple's and I want to do their product renderings, like that's
yeah,
but again, I'm not in this world, so like that's where my
well,
mind goes, but like what are
that's
other things that come to mind for you?
so I was actually applying for some internships, and one of the internships I got kind of far with, I didn't end up going through, was with Logitech, and it was for their visual design team for things like product renderings and everything like that, and presenting products, whether it's like about to be released or it just got released, and like just any kind of marketing or any kind of visuals that they needed is like that team of like having like a rotating webcam and everything and making it
Sure,
look
yeah.
good and also telling the story of like why they created the form the way they did. And that was like the first time I was like, that's actually something I would really, really like to do. And so
Sure, yeah.
I found myself like genuinely getting excited for something like that. And I think that's why I started to do a little bit more product stuff. So I think that is a route that would genuinely get me excited to be a part of and to end up doing eventually. Um, but yeah, like the whole same sense of like some whether it's like Apple or some other tech company or even
You
like
should
a
look into a company called Teenage Engineering.
yeah, I
And
know about them. Yes.
yeah, so they're like a great company. Again, that's where my mind goes a bit when you're talking about this.
Yeah.
Also, funny enough, like, it may not be the most popular beverage company, but Pepsi, I worked with a bunch of really talented creatives there that like did 3D, did industrial design, and I could see how you could slot in into a place like that as well because again, it's that core skill that's really valuable and you'll work with really talented creative directors to kind of like direct you in, what they're looking for and stuff, but they would do a lot of really cool stuff where they're coming up with different ways to show their beverage products, or their snack
Mhm.
products, stuff like that. And, a lot of it is like 3D rendering and doing a lot of crazy cool animation stuff and things like that. And it's not all done in-house. There are partners that do it outside, agencies that they work with. But, that's another place where on a, like, yeah, we're talking about like really applicable product marketing, but you could also slot into a really creative team that like needs that level of skill in terms of execution to put these things together, like put these really creative, elaborate, like short videos and things like that together as well.
Oh, I think it cut out just a
Is there
little
a
bit.
delay? Is there a delay?
It was like a little bit robotic for a second.
Fuck. What did you hear? What
Um,
did you not?
you were talking about the how you could apply in certain companies like where they have like a creative team that needs to technically execute it kind of thing, where they have the ideas and everything, but they need someone who can actually like yeah
Put the
execute like
put the
skill
the
wise and
core
everything.
of it together
Right, right. So
and
yeah, I got what you said. It was just a little bit. It was a little bit choppy.
God damn it, fucking Wi-Fi here. Um,
Where are
it-
you located? I saw the time thing.
I'm in Indonesia at the moment, in Bali.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha.
So yeah, the Wi-Fi on the island is not the strongest at times I've found, but yeah, I mean, you can again, you're in a program right now, you'll have a couple of years where you're gonna like learn a lot more. Not only that, but also in the coming years with AI, there's gonna be a lot more creative things happening,
Mhm.
which, something may pop up and you're like, wow, I really want to do that. Like for a while for me, now that I mean it's like not even part of discussion anymore. I was really, really into augmented reality. And I was like, I really want to be in that space. And for a while, I was like every day at my job or on my way to my job, I would like take a video on my phone. And then at the end of the day, when I was like done with all my work, I would take that video and then figure out, okay, cool. Like, what would be a cool way to like augment some typography into this video, right? So like I
Mhm.
would go, you know, like if I like walked up to my building and I like panned up with my camera, like could I show like my calendar of meetings, like and animate that stuff in, you know, like
Mhm.
if I got to the train station before I got on the train home, could there be like something cool where like if I looked on both sides of the platform, it would tell me which one it goes where and which one goes that way, you know, like so like all these little experiments I would do because I was like, man, I really want to get into augmented reality. And I was applying to like Facebook's 3D, what they call reality labs team for like a year and a half. I was like, I just kept sending in apps.
Mhm.
And you know, that's where I thought the space was going to go because, you know, we weren't even thinking about AI. We were thinking about like glasses
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
somewhat of the metaverse or 3D world and stuff like that. But, you know, who knows will pop up in the next year or so, which might even pull you into that direction instead.
Right. Yeah. No,
Um,
true. There's a lot of opportunity. It's wild right now.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Any other questions or anything like that you want to go over?
Um, not not really, not specifically. I really enjoyed the just yeah, general more broader concepts discussion and just like general principles like yeah, intention and figuring out why and and coming up with a story, even if there is no real story, or just treating it like there's a story
Yeah,
and telling that story kind of thing.
exactly.
Yeah, no real specific questions. To be honest, not right now at
Well,
least.
you have my email. If you have anything comes up, let me know. And you know, would love to stay in touch as you know, you work on new stuff or you're update your portfolio, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess that is the question. Would I mean, I know I obviously don't want to hog the resources, especially like your time and having for other people, but is it a thing where potentially like a month down the line, just do another one of these kind of thing? Or
absolutely, man.
however long. Awesome.
No time
Yeah,
on me. It's fine with me. After
cool.
this, you'll get an email like in like 5 or 10 minutes that I'll just have like 2 or 3 questions. If you could fill those out, that'll help me figure out where I should send all the notes and the link to this recording.
Definitely. Sounds good. Thank
All
you.
righty, David, it was lovely to meet you. Have a good rest of your night and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take
Have a good
care.
one. Bye bye.